Hey everybody, Fit Fanny here, and welcome to day 2 of my Take 2 75 Hard Challenge. So, in case you didn't catch yesterday's video, I'm restarting 75 Hard. Do two things. If you want to know more, check out the day 1 Take 2 video. And if you're new here and you're just like, what is this all about for you anyway? If you go back to my day 1 video, I talk all about why I'm doing 75 hard, what it means to me, and what I'm hoping to get out of it. So it'll give more context to all of the other things. Even though I restarted 75 hard, I did accomplish 20 days of it, which is basically just shy of 3 weeks. And I have actually had some significant changes. So obviously, there's like the whole sort of like personal transformation that I talked about in yesterday's video. But there have been physical changes as well. And even though the physical is not my primary goal, I do think a lot of people are interested in what those physical transformations are like. And so I decided that today I would just talk a little bit about what that has been like for me. I keep a spreadsheet. I don't remember which day that is shared, but I do have in one of my previous videos where I share how I've been tracking my progress. So there's a variety of things that I check in on weekly. I check in on my weight, body mass index, body fat percentage, visceral fat, blood pressure, glucose average, and then body measurements. So I do waist, chest, bust, thighs, calves, and biceps and hips. And yeah, I've actually seen progress. And what I'm most excited about is that it's been slow, which I could imagine for some people might feel kind of frustrating, like, oh my gosh, I'm, exercising twice a day, I'm eating healthy, I'm doing all these things, and my transformation is really slow. But for me, one of the things that my scale reading gives me is actually my body composition stats. So not only does it track body fat, but it also shows me muscle, so that I'm making sure that if I'm losing weight, I'm not also losing muscle. And the one thing I've noticed, I use a withing scale. I'm quite sure that the body fat percentage and the muscle percentages are incorrect. Unplugged. I probably don't need to have it plugged in, but just in case. While I don't trust the actual numbers that they give me, I hope that it's at least calibrated to itself. So if I'm seeing increases or I'm seeing decreases, at least they're equally inaccurate, like, I don't know if that makes sense. But anyway, let's just get into it. So in terms of my weight over the course of 3 weeks, I have lost about 1.75 kilograms, which translates to a few pounds. So it's not huge. It's not, like earth shattering. We all know that, within a day we can fluctuate a lot, whether we've, been drinking enough or whether we've recently had a meal or if we've recently gone to the bathroom or recently done something really sweaty. So as I said, it's not a huge transformation. 3 pounds is not remarkable. But as I said, along with some of the other changes that I've seen, it actually shows me that I'm on the right track in terms of trying to maintain the musculature that I've grown along the way. I'm not compromising my bone density, and I'm overall making sure that I'm nourishing myself enough to have energy to continue through on my 75 hard. Otherwise, my waist measurements have come down an inch. My hip measurements have also come down an inch. Both of my thighs have come down an inch. One of them, I think, was an inch and a half. My my quads are different sizes, which is kind of interesting. My hips have reduced an inch, and my biceps. I think I forgot to say that I've been measuring my biceps. My biceps are down about half an inch. So, and my calves are down also a half an inch. So That's actually quite a bit of a difference. If you think about clothing sizes, if you're like, when you're looking at the sizing chart for like whatever clothing that you wear, usually it's like a 1 to 2 inch span per size. And so the fact that I'm down an inch in a lot of areas means that I'm, having noticeable changes in the shape of my body. And I'm actually feeling it too. Summer is always one of those tough times because most of the time I'm wearing very lightweight clothing, very loose clothing, and like things that have like elastics, so I might not notice as much if I'm gaining or if I'm losing weight in the summer. But as I'm getting back into my work routine, as I'm getting back into my workwear, I'm noticing as I'm putting on the pants that have like a button or a zipper, that there is a little bit of extra space in the waistband, or that things that used to feel a little bit more clingy in my hips and thighs are now having a little bit more give. So not only am I seeing it in the measurements, but I'm also seeing it in how my clothing is fitting me. So it's nothing so dramatic that I'm like wearing a different size or anything. And that's not even my goal. But there are changes. And the other thing that I'm happy about, going back to the size of, like my biceps, for example, I don't necessarily want little spindly arms. Like I want my arms to be strong and muscular. Obviously, if I'm able to lose a little bit of the extra fat and gain a little bit of extra muscle, that's ideal. So, I'm not expecting to see a really dramatic shift in my biceps, because I would anticipate that as I'm exercising and lifting weights and doing things like that, I'm going to be growing muscle, or at least maintaining muscle, while losing a little bit of fat. The other thing I'll say is that as part of 75 Hard, I'm taking progress photos along the way. And, from day to day, I really don't see any difference. And, there's some days where I look more puffy and bloated, and some days where I look less puffy and bloated. And we all know that depending on what we ate, depending on when we ate, how much we've, had to drink, what, like when we last ate, if we just woke up, if we're in the middle of the day, all of those things impact photographs. And my goal has been to try to take a picture every morning, but realistically, sometimes I forget. And so I end up taking the picture later in the day. And so it's not necessarily a very true comparison from day to day. But what I will say is I am starting to see some definition. So for example, in my arms, I'm starting to see just ever so slight, like of a dent here and a dent here. Obviously, like if I were flexing, I would have always had like, a bicep muscle. But like when my arms aren't flexed, I can still see a little tiny bit of a dent on either side. And I would say overall, my triceps are quite strong, but they're usually obscured by, the fat that I have on the back of my arms. And I'm starting to see a little bit more definition there. Also, the first place I really started to see pop were my quads. I really noticed, even in the first week, that I was starting to have a lot more definition kind of on that, like, right above the knee where there's that kind of little like curve spot. I'm definitely seeing a lot more definition on my quads. And lastly, on my abs, I certainly don't have a six pack or anything. And I don't know if that's in the cards for me or if that's even what I want. But I do notice that I'm starting to have kind of just those two little sort of outer lines, like if I'm not flexing. And when I am flexing, I have the outer lines and I just have kind of the starts of some other lines, which is telling me that my muscle is sustaining and that I might be losing a little bit of fat. So overall, those are some of the shifts that I've seen in my 75 Hard progress in terms of weight, in terms of body composition, and just in terms of like overall body appearance. As I mentioned before, I have been keeping track of my blood pressure. I'm not seeing dramatic blood pressure changes. They're all within a healthy range. And of course, they fluctuate a couple points this way or a couple points that way, but there's not an overall trend so far with that. I did wear my glucose monitor steadily for the first 2 weeks. And then while exercising, I accidentally ripped it off. And it just took me a while to put it back on. So I've got it back on now. But I didn't have any particular observation overall. I will say that prior to 75 Hard, not recently, but some months ago, I was regularly wearing a glucose monitor for a while. And I also noticed that I was frequently waking up in the morning over 100 on the glucose monitor. So for those of you who aren't particularly knowledgeable about blood sugar, one sign of prediabetes is regularly waking up with over 100 in terms of your blood sugar. And I have a family history of heart issues, a family history of diabetes. And so it's something that's definitely on my radar that I'm trying to be conscious of as I, get older, and as I am thinking about my nutrition and my exercise and just my lifestyle overall. And while I've never been officially diagnosed with prediabetes, it's definitely something that I'm monitoring so that when I go to the doctor, I'm looking at what are my results when I go there. Certainly a doctor's results are going to be more accurate than my glucose monitor because they're literally drawing the blood and testing it in that way. But anyway, I haven't noticed a big change there, but it's something that I'm just trying to monitor. Getting off track. But I used to wake up over 100. And since I've been doing 75 hard, I've consistently been waking up under 100 in terms of the glucose. So whether that's statistically significant or whether that's just, the natural variation that happens within continuous glucose monitors, I have seen some positive shifts in terms of that. The other thing I'll mention is that my visceral fat, according to the Withings scale, has gone from 1.4 to 1.1. They've overall always been in a healthy range, but of course, the less visceral fat, the better. Visceral fat is quote unquote like the bad fat, the fat that can cause more health issues than the subcutaneous, which is the sort of stuff that's like above the skin, or just beneath the skin, I should say. And I've also seen, I've seen stability in terms of my muscle, and I've seen decreases in terms of my body fat. So overall, I'm pleased with how things have been going. My energy has felt good, especially, like when I think just big picture overall. I've also been sleeping really well. I'm finding myself very tired, which means that I sleep well. And then when I wake up, I feel energized, which is also really great. For those of you who followed me along the way, I've had a couple of rough days here and there. And of course, energy can wane when you're having a bad day, and can also change as you're going throughout the month and, all those things. But overall, I'm feeling great. My body seems to be holding up really well. I'm actually having fewer aches and pains in my hips and knees and ankles and feet from what I normally do, based on, historic aging aches and pains or like recurring injury aches and pains. So yeah, I'm delighted. I've been really happy with the 75 hard challenge. I'm feeling good in my body and I'm feeling better and better in my mind. And I am so excited that you all have come along for the journey with me. Please let me know if you have done 75 hard, what kinds of transformations you've seen, whether that's physical, mental, whatever. Or if you have questions about 75 hard, and you want to hear my perspective, I'm always happy to share. The last thing I will state is I'm not a doctor. I'm not a dietitian. I'm certainly not an expert on diet and exercise. So I'm simply sharing what the results have been like for me. I can't say that these are normal results or abnormal results. I also can't say whether these are healthy or unhealthy. I certainly feel good in how things are going, but I encourage you all to consult with your medical professional team to figure out what is best and most healthful for you. Thank you so much for being here. I look forward to speaking with you tomorrow. Until then, take good care.